I agree with a lot of that. I think there are differences. It's quite interesting. There is perhaps slightly less insecurity in Britain. If you go and look at sort of the Trump voting Americans, the fact that healthcare was so important, actually, that element of kind of people who thought their families were behind, sorry, apologies for the sexist stereotype, and so much relied on, normally the husband's healthcare was tied so much to things. That doesn't really count as much in Europe because you've got the NHS, but there was, on this issue of immigration, there's quite interesting feeling of powerlessness, and people, the British on the whole, extremely good at immigration, probably with the exception of the Americans, probably the best in the world in terms of bringing people in, inherently global, able to give people a start. This flood of people which came in over the period before the referendum, it really was very large, and people, they were told by the European, people who introduced it, I think said there might be 30, 40,000. By the time it was about 1 million, it swamped a lot of local services, and it caught that odd balance between the British on the one hand being arguably the most global people on the planet, but also being an island nation and all that stuff. So it hit things. I think one interesting parallel, seeing you brought it up earlier, is Boris and Trump. And they certainly have, they have some elements of strangeness to the truth and stuff like that. And they both have a degree of Teflon. Boris is somebody who can happily wander. He can be done on some sex scandal on the tabloids, and then the next day make a speech making fun of himself.
They're remarkably similar.
He has a lot of, the only bit I would say, which is a strange, I think if you worked for Boris, he would undermine you by, if you were transport minister, he would show up and imagine that you'd spent the whole time saying that railways were a great thing. He could happily appear having done no research at all or not listened to, and go on about how cars were much better. So he would undermine his people in a general, nonchalant sort of way. He doesn't tend to be as nasty as Trump, and I think that's quite important. He's not entirely faithful, rather obviously. He's somewhat duplicitous, but he doesn't have the same going for people personally stuff that Trump does.
He also speaks more Latin.
He speaks a lot more Latin.
But I think there is, what's interesting actually right now, though, and you can get carried, the British tabloids are full of, Britain's, meet the Trumps, well, meet the Johnsons, meet the Trumps, and he's got a kind of complicated family and colourful sisters and brothers, and it's all that. But I think what striking thing is, and we've had, when there were still more candidates in this thing, several of the candidates came to see us at The Economist, and I was struck by how it's now quite sort of par for the course for British politicians to say, well, we have to learn from Donald Trump, and he's been remarkably successful, and and there's a very explicit sense that there are things for the British Tories to learn, and so I think this comparison is one that's going to be made well, and Boris is very self-consciously, clearly learning from some of the playbook here.